Hello, everyone. Today, I'm very honored and privileged to have Rhonda Sparks-Tranks with us in this Innovation Creeds podcast. Um, Today's title is called Leading by Facilitating, and it's one of the most important topics that lots of organizations are moving into. And thanks to Rhonda, our guest, one of the experts in facilitation in International Association of Facilitation around the world. She is now with us, and I believe that Rhonda, as a master facilitator, have been doing this for years and decades of experience. I believe that's you started in the 90s, I think, Rhonda, or before that even.
I won't say how long ago I've been doing it, but it was before my hair went white.
Oh, and actually, Rhonda is a trainer, coach, facilitator, working with major corporates and organizations around the world. Facilitation focuses on usually on navigating organizational change after restructures, strategic direction setting, and planning and team development, particularly when work relationships have become dysfunctional. And this is how she introduces herself in her mini biography. But I would like actually to learn from you, Rhonda. How do you want to introduce yourself to our audience today?
Well, firstly, let me say that this topic, I could talk about it for hours, days probably, if somebody didn't close me down. But more importantly, I think people on this call could talk about it amongst themselves for ages with their own examples of why this is just so important. Um, I've been facilitating for a very long time. Before I kind of did that, I also did a lot of leadership development. And I've seen organizations and leaders struggle with how to get more engagement. I don't know about the rest of you online, but we see so many employee engagement surveys with poor results. And I could pretty much guess which of those leaders are more facilitative leaders and which ones aren't, based on the results of their culture surveys, their employee engagement surveys. So it's kind of what I do. And I suppose my mission is to try and bring facilitation or facilitative ways of working, not just to professional facilitators like myself, but to leaders, because I just think it just makes things better for the leaders, for the team, for the whole organization. So that's me, Mohammed.
Yeah, and I believe that on this mission, you've been around the world and you've been in many various parts of the world. I've heard you when we were actually scheduling this, one time telling me you're going to Korea, then another time telling me you're going to India and then going to Singapore. So it seems you've been around for
I
so
have,
so
yeah. I've
yeah.
actually just not long ago come back from China, running my seventh 4-day facilitation training program there. So yeah, I've trained people in the Americas, right across Europe. Shalaka Gundi's online here. She knows I work with her in India. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness, there's Anne in Germany. So yes, um, yeah, people all around the world. So, and humans are the same all around the world. There's different cultures. I'll just there's different cultures, but we're still basically human. Yeah,
Yes. Yes.
the
And
same.
I believe in this. And actually, one of the things that I find all over the world that maybe human needs for connections, for understanding, for keeping the discussions going and the focus on what we are here for, is maybe the same, but different in the styles of how they relate to it, how they relate to the connection, to the dialogue, to the context, and for the conversation, and how they participate. So
Yeah.
thank you for allowing these spaces. And actually, I believe that you have many stories that you want to tell today. So maybe let's start with one of them. Like how about starting with a story that can tell us about, like how organizations shift when facilitation is coming in for their leadership team?
Yeah, look, I've got two really big ones. I think one's current and one was a few years back. And I'll start with the second one. A large, well, let's just say police and emergency services, large organization in Australia. And what I was asked to do was come in and train an internal cohort of 80 middle to quite senior leaders in that organization. And it had absolute endorsement from the very top. In fact, the top wanted to bring this in. And we worked with them for about 2 years, training and then running regular retreats and upgrading them. What they did was they took the leaders from one area and trained them as facilitators. They still had their normal job, like, they were still leaders. And then they went and facilitated things in another physical region or location. And what this meant was that they were not invested in the content of those discussions because it wasn't their own area. So they were able to be more neutral, which was extremely powerful. And I suppose the people were less fearful in those groups of speaking up to a leader from another area than they were from their own area. And with that, they were able to give a lot of very powerful feedback and develop not just feedback, but develop really strong action plans and commit to them and do them. And we saw, I think, a major transformation. And I know you asked me to speak about organizational transformations. One little thing that I noticed was whoever is the big top leader that pushes this and wants it, it will function brilliantly while that leader is there. But if another leader comes in and they don't have the same, they don't value facilitative ways of working,
Yeah.
or let's say they've been charged with getting a change really quickly across the whole organization. And they're charged with doing that. And literally they drive and charge it through like a bull in a china shop. And it's almost like they want to break a lot of the good work that was done before. And what was valued and what was happening gets lost. So my view now generally is to not try and get organizational transformation all at once, but to work with those leaders who have, I've written it down here, the appetite to work this way, the ability to work this way, and the personal attributes, that their qualities as a person. So I work with them and build pockets of excellence as much as
Pockets of
possible.
excellence.
Pockets of excellence as a facilitative leader.
Yeah.
And then and this has just happened the other week, another branch saw what this branch was doing and said, could you come in and show us and facilitate? And now I've got interest in people there learning how to facilitate. So my view, generally, unless you've got strong commitment and built into the systems. So the other story I have is one of the world's largest international IT corporations. And they've now built into their core competencies for leaders being a facilitative leader and knowing how to facilitate meetings. So building it into the competencies that they would be recruited and, promoted against. And that, to me, is absolutely sustainable. And I've been working with groups for about 2 to 3 years now of the leaders who put their hand up to really start leading this facilitative thing and be the role models and the drivers of the change. So that, to me, is the way you really get that transformation.
So you mentioned a lot this facilitative leadership or facilitative, qualities of a leader. So can you maybe go deeper into how you build this? What kind of competences are expected? What kind of qualities, what kind of, things that are built in a leader that makes them facilitators in that?
One is not being frightened, and this is coming back a little bit the opposite, not needing to be in control all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So once you're facilitative, you are working with the group. You're not driving it. You are genuinely interested in bringing out and capitalizing on the diversity of perspectives, experience, qualifications of everybody in the team. Now, if a leader thinks that they're the only person that has all the expertise to make the decisions, it often comes from a place of fear within themselves. If they are able to let go of that and know how to harness the expertise in that team, it pays huge dividends. So they've got to be able to value the diversity of perspectives and want to, I think I will use the word harness, the varied expertise, to know ways of deliberately drawing that out and not being frightened, again, of even conflict and strong disagreement, being challenged, and allowing that challenge and encouraging that challenge of perspective of thinking within their team or within their group. I've got a little article, it's in there, we could share it, about keeping the canaries singing in your meetings. Some of the biggest corporate and organisational failures have happened over history, right back to, I don't know, Alexander the Great and wherever, when the leaders didn't listen to the words of warning or the concerns. And one of the most important things, I think, for a facilitative leader, as the group is exploring problems and making decisions, is to deliberately seek out a diverse perspective to make sure that they're not in groupthink. And a leader can fall in love with their own ideas and their own decisions. So being able to have a meeting with their staff and their team and others across the organisation to say, challenge me on this. How might this not work? And get people jointly and collaborating to solve a problem will prevent that groupthink. How am I going? There's lots more.
That's a lot, because actually you mentioned in the beginning, like this circles of excellence, where leaders as facilitators are listening to other parts of the organization, sometimes not their direct reports, but as if you're putting here some safe spaces where people are actually able to talk freely and like listen effectively, and and then you're talking, the first leadership quality you mentioned was actually the courage of the leader
Courage. Yes.
to listen, and actually, and then you mentioned like conflicts, and which is scary in some in some parts of the world and some cultures, to go through conflicts with this openness and courage. So I'm really intrigued by like the two dichotomies, like where you take people out of their fear in a space, and you're asking the one who's doing this, or inviting them to do this with courage, because it's, and to go in a scary place where they will find them in the maybe they will find them fighting over things or conflicting over things that are essential for each one of the parties. So this is not easy.
It
So
is, and you mentioned
yeah,
safe space, Mohammed, safe space. So
yeah,
I work across certain cultures where to speak up to authority is considered very disrespectful.
yes,
And the manager mightn't even be aware of what they're missing out on, the missed opportunities.
yeah.
And people, regardless of what the manager might say, this is a safe space, speak up. They might say that. But culturally, in the organization or in the ethnic or organized company culture or the national culture, that might be something people say they want, but people are generally
Speak up, yeah. Speak up, huh?
yeah, speak up, speak up.
Speak up, huh?
Yeah, speak up. One way I find to do that is to start off with ways that it's not an individual's perspective
Yes.
that is being raised, but do it in small groups of 2 to 3 when I'm facilitating. And so I worked just last week, and I knew that if I got individuals to challenge something, they mightn't have done it because we had a very, very senior person in the room. But when I asked them in their table groups of 8 to come up with comments or questions or challenges, and to come with a question that somebody would ask on behalf of the table, that felt much safer. It wasn't an individual being that sense of being exposed in front of the most senior people in the organization. And this very senior person just loved it. He said he'd never been asked those sorts of questions before, but it was because I suppose I brought a facilitative way of doing it, with creating something that felt safe for people to do it because they were not individually exposed. And then as the 2 days progressed, more and more people were able to individually speak up and add their comments to others. But if people are not speaking up to a leader, and that's coming through a culture survey or employee engagement survey, then there's a big message for that leader around their own courage, or what are they doing and how are they modeling it themselves, and are they inadvertently trying to take charge of the meeting. That's why an external facilitator can be handy at times, because the leader can sit inside the meeting, and we as external facilitators can challenge them in a way that they aren't if they're there. But I really believe that it's something all leaders need to develop, how to work more facilitatively. Now, that doesn't mean, Mohammed, that there isn't a time in emergencies or something needing to happen in a big hurry, or a decision that's absolutely been made, across the organization, that leader doesn't need to be more directive. So I'm not saying that sitting around and solving problems together collaboratively is the only way to go and the way you go all the time.
Yeah.
But
It's
when
one of the
leaders,
spectrums of leadership roles, and actually, it takes a lot um, of courage actually, and I believe it's mainly it's more of recontracting with the audience. Whether this is my call as a leader, I have to, blow the whistle. This is where we are going, and it's, I'll be the bull in the Chinatown, as you said in the beginning. I'll just, this is how it will be done. And
yes,
yes, this is time for me to listen. This is time for us to sit, to collaborate, to come up with something that we will all be working on. So how the team can sense and understand when the leaders are taking the call for the shots, and sometimes, yeah, it's us. We will decide in a facilitative way. I guess it needs a lot of recontracting and harmonization between the leader and integrating this in their leadership style, and with the team, to understand when it's a facilitative stance or it is a directive stance.
absolutely, being transparent about, this is where I need absolute collaboration, or even handing over to the team to make this whole decision, and being transparent. And otherwise, in this instance, I've made the decision, and now we're going to look at how we're going to, implement it.
Yeah.
But but I shouldn't say but then. See, bad facilitation, finishing something and saying but. And
Yeah.
not modeling my own work. I think another important thing, we talk about EQ a lot, but what seems to have fallen out of favor is talking of social intelligence, Daniel Goleman's book on social intelligence as well. And that sort of talks more about not our own emotional intelligence, but the fact that we're social beings. And you get generally the best out of people when they're doing a task at work if they're able to relate to the right people to get that task done and get it done often jointly. And building that social capital in your team, I think, is really important. And that is built by valuing what those team members brought. I mean, you hire people for their qualifications, their experience, their perspectives, and their personal qualities.
Yeah.
What I see very often in organizations is people are hired for that, but the leaders are not taking advantage of it. They're missing so much of an opportunity when they're not tapping into that. Now, can I kind of understand why? Because there's so much work pressure that it's often, let's just drive this through. But
Yeah.
you'll get greater commitment and alignment when you bring more people in too.
Yes, and most of the leader, and when we work with leaders and coaching and like in executive coaching, they always this issue of delegation and issue of like I'm always stressed. I have to do things on my own. I have to, and then when maybe it is and looking at the team, their potentials, and like find them managing 12 to 13 people, it's very hard to not find the competencies you need within this spectrum of human beings who are already engaged and already, waiting for, like more work and more challenge to grow and to be seen in the organization. So, like it's just, when having this facilitation stance and sharing, having the courage to share what you have in your mind and building this trust that we I'm here for you and you are here for me and we are all together. We need, these are our team objective, not only my objective. I believe that it engages everyone in the group, and I believe it's also one of the recipes of keeping the people engaged, especially the new generations, where they find significance in participation and
Yeah,
significance
absolutely.
in being here, and this democratic stance of like we are all here supporting each other, and our leader is part of an integral part of our team. He's facilitating our success.
You've hit the nail on the head in one thing there, Mohammed, and that is this generational expectations. In when I started work, I'd be in terrible trouble if I actually disagreed with my boss. We're actually seated in a hierarchical ranks, down the
Yeah.
office with the boss at the back looking at everybody's, making sure they were working. That's not the way we work now. And millennials and what's coming up, there's an expectation right through schooling, right through everywhere, that they will be participating in the decisions of their life. And leaders and managers who don't attend to that, over time will be in more trouble than those who are attending to the expectations of a generation that want to be more involved. It's interesting, when I had a coaching session with a client this morning, still grappling with delegating. And he knows he's supposed to, and he knows that people are thinking he's micromanaging, and he seems to shift between the micromanaging and then total abdication. Okay, you know how to do it now. Just leave
Yeah.
you alone. And I'll be facilitating his team in a week's time. But he does value facilitation. I must say, he knows that what they're supposed to do, and the very fact that he has so many meetings where he deliberately seeks somebody to lead the meeting to share the information, I think. Yeah, his heart's in the right spot. He values it. And that makes me think about something. We know And leaders often know what they're supposed to be doing. It all shows up in all the competencies. You are supposed to be doing this. This is the competency, what you do. There's probably not enough attention given to how they learn to do that, how they do it. And the skill development and the coaching that you talk about, the courage to step into something, or just simple skill development around more sophisticated questioning techniques, or in that little article with the canaries, drawing out different perspectives. Some of it is just skill development, and nifty tricks that facilitators use, that facilitative leaders can use. I say tricks, but they're more tips. So we know what we're supposed to do. Leaders usually know what they're supposed to do. The gap is, well, how on earth am I supposed to do it?
Yeah. And they themselves have the fear of trying the things in the first time and having a space where they can actually try this in a learning space with a group of other leaders who are having the same challenge, like getting themselves out and navigating through
Absolutely.
conflicting opinions and taking out with the result, whatever, and going with courage is that it's really tough for some people. And I guess it's easier when having a facilitation program in place where they can actually learn and develop.
Absolutely.
So,
When I train facilitators, there's a practice session. So they work in learning groups to do a case study on scoping and debriefing. In fact, Shalaka is on this call and she's my co-pilot when we're doing the one coming up in November. And people sign up to that want to be a pure facilitator, or they are a leader in their organization and know that they've got to be more facilitative or facilitator with stakeholders and model that in their organizations. So a safe space to practice and get feedback from peers, I think, is really important. Yeah.
Yeah. So, just, like as we are talking about a program for facilitation, how about, like if you want to maybe offer something for those who would like to maybe join being leaders as facilitators and join such a program to
Yeah. Two things.
become, to integrate facilitation skills. Yeah.
I haven't finished writing an article yet on being a facilitative leader. So contact me, folks, if you want that, and I'll send it when I finish writing it. But I have a program starting in November. Early bird closes tomorrow. It's on my website. It's 5 sessions over 4 weeks. You're in a learning group of 3. Each session is 3 hours, except for the final session, it's 4 hours. And every learning group runs a mini facilitation on the issues that they think are important, like how do we get greater take-up of facilitative leadership in our organization, for example. So they practice tools, classic facilitation tools. Shalaka and I observe, and the program is directly aligned with the competencies for the International Association of Facilitators. So we look at all core competencies in the program.
So it's
That's
IAF
the
accredited
pitch.
program.
That's the pitch, Mohammed.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Rhonda. And maybe the last thing, before moving into, like our closures, and I believe that if any of the guests have any questions or interventions, maybe please put it on chat. That would be great. But before that, maybe there was something you mentioned in the middle when the internal leader is not as effective as a facilitator as they should be, and inviting in an external facilitator. When can this be something that is viable, and how to maybe, like when to qualify that this is a need for an external facilitator? It's not, I cannot do it internally anymore.
Yeah. Well, as a professional facilitator, we remain sort of impartial on the content or the decision. So if you're a leader and you want to be involved in the decision, but not come across as if you're driving that final decision or driving what's happening at the end. You need to be involved, but and have your voice heard without it looking like you're manipulating or leading that decision. That is when using an external facilitator or a trained facilitator in another part of your organization. So that's why training up internal cohorts is extremely valuable. So what to look for, the facilitator's qualifications, their experience in that type of facilitation, not the content. I mean, I've facilitated groups of engineers and geneticists and science. I know nothing about cardiac surgery, right? But I've facilitated a lot of, a group of cardiac surgeons. Our expertise is in designing the process of how the meeting goes and let the group manage the content. So what you're looking for is a facilitator that starts to ask a lot of questions about the context of that event. And they've got strong experience in large group facilitation or team where there's conflict arisen, or solid experience in stakeholder engagement. I don't do that myself. I don't like people yelling at me in town hall meetings. So I no longer do that kind of work. Most of these, but what to look for is when you're going to look for a facilitator and you're giving them a briefing, I'd be paying careful attention to the good questions that facilitator asked you, rather than you just asking the facilitator questions. What sort of information did they ask of you? Would give you a very good understanding, I think, an idea of how that facilitator functions and operates. Is that helpful? Okay. I think there's so many things. We just scratch the surface. We scratch the surface.
Yes. But it's just, it's a very tricky decision. Yeah, I trained my people to be facilitators. So why do I hire an external facilitator and pay that rate per hour or per day or what? So it's there are sound reasons, and when impartiality is one of the, like top reasons. And the other things, like keeping everybody on the same floor, because I believe that leaders also inside organizations have, like their rank and their power dynamics that actually may block some information from flowing or.
Absolutely. Yeah. And also often when we're training internal cohorts of facilitators, they are basically middle level managers, whereas they would not be comfortable and they might not even have the authority that they need to facilitate the very top band across an organization. So a couple of weeks ago, I facilitated the very top band of a group, even though I know they've got some good people in there that could have done it. I can see we still have leaders that don't see the net. Yes, I know. What advice? Okay. I don't think, if they're like that, I don't know whether they're going to take advice. However, if we frame it as, what are you missing out on? What are you missing? You've made an investment in this staff and yet you're not capitalizing on the investment of the expertise inside that organization. So reframe it rather than pushing, have that person see that there's a gap and what are they missing out on? Missed opportunity for capitalizing on the human capital, on the human resources that organizations invest so much in. It's just so crazy not to unlock that expertise. Yeah.
I totally. I totally agree with you. And the question of Tariq, I actually can relate to the question that came before that from Muhammad Musa. Any activities in the Middle East, because, like it's maybe a pain in the Middle East, Tariq and Muhammad, like that. Maybe we have still some old school, like leaders who actually don't believe neither in facilitation or coaching or listening to the human capitals. And I believe that systemically there is a move cut them out, like by actually advancing new leaders from fresh, generations, and taking some leadership programs across the nations, like it's happening in the region in a way that's systemically, like these are like dinosaurs who are going to
Yes.
distinct over time, yet they're still there. And their shadow is still heavy, even with the new
Yeah.
generations, even with the trainings, like it makes the culture transformation into, like these more socially intelligent and these more susceptible leaders who listen and integrate and facilitate and coach, makes their job over time, like it takes longer time because like it's uh,
Yeah.
it's yeah. And I believe that many countries that you went to had this, like this
Yeah.
transition from old
Yeah.
generations and old school
Yeah.
leadership styles into new facilitative styles. And
Yes.
maybe, yeah. Mm,
I see it in certain parts of Far East Asia.
yeah.
That said, one would think that in China that that would not be popular. But what I'm seeing is not with the government corporations, but with international corporations and private sector um, organizations there, the push by the younger generation to not operate like this anymore is phenomenal,
Mm,
absolutely phenomenal. And what we're seeing in the International Association is this huge influx of people being trained as facilitators across China. So that's something, if you look for little indicators of how things are changing, the very fact that that is such a rapid growth area for people learning how to do this and be like this.
mm.
And that organization I mentioned before, the biggest take up for facilitative leaders and to undertake the training is in China. So that's, look at that as a symptom of something that's changing. Mm.
Thank you, Rhonda. Yeah, it's really a very, for me, I feel it fulfilled by this answer, and it seems like hope for the future because I believe in some eras. Yeah, I believe that very near eras that maybe the Middle East was maybe more democratic than China at some point of time,
Yeah.
and now China is coming into more facilitative styles, and so there is a rapid movement into facilitation training and into getting more leaders from younger generations who are more facilitative in style. I believe this, like when having this fever coming over the region, I guess it will also, makes it more susceptible into facilitative styles and integrating others.
I
So
hope so.
thank you for these insights, this experience, and for the answers, for for being there for everyone. I believe that we even had a generous extra 10 minutes in this.
Okay.
So maybe if you have a final word
Thank
for
you.
everyone, yeah.
Thank you for this amazing opportunity and for all of us to build our networks further and further internationally. I met Mohammed on LinkedIn. So look how marvelous it is to build our networks and what we can develop. Thank you, Mohammed, so much for inviting me. And I'd like to thank everybody for attending. Connect with me on LinkedIn if you haven't already. Reach out, chat. If you're interested in training, contact me. We've got one coming up. Yeah, I'd love to make more contact.
Yeah. Thank you, Rhonda. Thank you, everyone who joined us today and for staying all this time and actually participating with the questions and answers. Thank you, everyone, and have everyone a great day wherever you are, the region. And it's have an outstanding day. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.